With well-known phrases like "by the common man, for the common man," and "Saturdays are for the boys," El Presidente and his army of stoolies rule the roost at Barstool. If that meant nothing to you, then hopefully this video will clear the air about how one of the internet's most popular and controversial sports websites grew to fame. This is the story of how Barstool Sports grew from a tiny free Boston newspaper in 2003 to becoming a worldwide brand. Here's how it happened. First, it's important to understand what actually is Barstool. Well, for that we have to introduce you to Dave Portnoy, also known as El Presidente. Portnoy had the idea for Barstool when he quit the job he hated to launch a gambling newspaper in Boston. He loved gambling and saw it as his passion, but when trying to obtain a marketing role with offshore casinos, he was told he wasn't good enough. But the silver lining was that should he launch his own media outlet, those casinos would purchase advertising space in his paper. So Portnoy launched his own paper to discuss sports, gambling, and fantasy football, releasing the paper and handing it out by subway stations in Boston. He wrote the articles using pseudonyms, making it seem as though there were a number of writers at the paper, even though Portnoy wrote everything himself. Over the next few years, the fan base grew, albeit slowly, with Portnoy using local homeless people to distribute the paper to help keep costs low. As Portnoy received income, he poured it back into the business, finding new writers and building the brand. In 2007, as the paper had built up a larger audience and grown its own culture and style, Portnoy launched a website for the paper to help it take off across the USA. Portnoy's view for the business was to be anti-PC. They're the opposite of trying to please people with their writing. They're divisive, rude, and they don't care. It's attracted quite a cult following. The description of their office describes the firm in its early days, described as a dump, almost anonymous from the street, and with a frat house, crime scene kind of vibe. It wasn't seen as a company that had strong corporate leadership, let's put it that way. Portnoy has described his site in the past as a comedy empire camouflaged as a sports website that never sought its anti-PC reputation. But how did they actually succeed? Well, the popular website continued to gain traction with its fan base growing, but even Portnoy admits that they had great people making great content, but they weren't good at running the business. This led to Chernin Sports investing in the firm in 2016, with Portnoy giving up majority share, but maintaining editorial oversight. This is where part of the success lies, in the transition to a more well-run business led by the newly appointed CEO, Erika Nardini, who'd worked for AOL as Chief Marketing Officer and had stints at Yahoo and Microsoft. With Portnoy able to focus on the content, Nardini focused on the business. She identified many revenue streams within the brand, moving away from advertising dependency. Nardini targeted the fanatical fan base, introducing merchandise with sales up 400% year over year, using their taglines like "Saturdays are for the boys" and "They hate us cause they ain't us." But Nardini has also targeted content, with 25 employees pumping out 100 pieces of content daily across podcasts, blogs, YouTube, and radio, and then you've got the endless social media. They're less concerned about monetizing the strategies and more interested in the crazy exposure that's available. Barstool now writes stories, makes videos, and podcasts aimed at a younger generation. The focus is American football, but nothing's off limits as they target young, predominantly male sports fans. Those fans became diehard thanks in part to Barstool keeping the site free to read, unlike the subscription-charging New York Times and Wall Street Journal. Their slogans are just as crazy as the rest of their content, with "Viva la Stool" being the rallying cry at sporting events. Portnoy recalls that he said it once, and it went viral organically thanks to the viewers. "It's the same culture, the same people, it doesn't matter where we go, we Barstoolize it," Portnoy said. He even managed to blag an interview with Donald Trump. Barstool now attracts a crazy amount of readers, watchers, and listeners across all social media, and that crazy following, coupled with the legalization of online sports betting, led to Barstool being partly acquired by Penn National Gaming, who paid $163 million for a 36% stake. Penn National already has plans for Barstool-themed casinos and betting sites, given that most of the Barstool faithful are gamblers themselves. But like many successful companies, controversy is never too far away, especially with Barstool, which has seen its fair share of bust-ups. Female reporters have accused Portnoy and the Stoolies of verbal harassment, like Laura Wagner of Deadspin. Feminist groups have teamed up to try and stop daily features like Local Smoke Show of the Day, and Portnoy has found himself in seriously hot water too, after posting a naked photo of Tom Brady's son, which saw a police visit and a radio station ban. But Portnoy has suggested that Barstool is uncancelable. He even goes on the offensive, suggesting that the only girl he'd hired prior to Nardini was Jenna Marbles, now a former YouTuber with over 20 million subscribers. He claims she never thanked him for launching her career when she was previously working in a tanning salon beforehand. But what about Saturdays Are For The Boys? How did that come about? One of the writers, John Fietelberg, was in a bar in Rhode Island when he heard an old man shout, "Fridays are for the men, Saturdays are for the boys." Fietelberg posted it on Twitter and checked back the next day to see thousands of retweets. Nardini even jumped on the bandwagon too when she arrived, wearing a shirt that read "Mondays to Fridays are for the girls," likely in a bid to broaden their fanbase and improve their rep. But according to Nardini, Barstool knows who it is and what it is and what's funny. We're consistent, we're constant, it's very relatable, and it's a brand that doesn't take itself too seriously. It's a brand without an agenda, it's a brand that's unafraid, and it's a brand that's very loyal to its audience, and in return, its audiences are very loyal to it. And with it being Portnoy's life mission to prove that doing things in a traditional and polite way is old-fashioned, wrong, and stupid, he's made it his life goal to take Barstool to the moon, and he won't stop until he makes that happen. Thanks for watching.